I broke up with my wife after she betrayed me and said it was only for fun before leaving. However, she asked for my assistance once more, so I complied. I've been married to my wife for 12 years. We think our marriage began when we were quite young. Even though she was quite young, at the time it seemed right to both of us. After around a year and a half, we decided that was enough time together. Though we knew we were supposed to be together, there were moments when I'm not sure if it was truly meant to be. I do a fairly decent job at what I do. Together with my brothers, I own a jewelry company. Our accomplishment of building it from the ground up and seeing it reach a highly profitable level is always something to be proud of. While some claim that doing business with family is difficult, for us it has been an absolute dream. We've never been the quarreling kind of brothers, so your experience might be totally different. In contrast, my spouse opened a charming cafe where patrons could get literature, coffee, and pastries. She has always had a passion for reading and takes pride in the fact that it defines them. Before I met her, I truly didn't like those individuals. Either way, I'm lying. Bite me, please. Since I wanted to support her, I was genuinely thrilled about the concept and did her a favor by paying the rent on the premises she uses for the cafe. The firm is profitable, which pleased me because it meant I didn't have to think about it even though it's in a more upscale area of town and is really pricey. Concerning rent. I believe you now have all the information you require. This is the true beginning of the narrative. I don't know the precise date, but I think she told me about the new man that entered the shop sometime in March. He was quite attractive, she said. They made me feel comfortable, and I learned that complimenting someone on their beauty doesn't have to be taken too seriously. But there was something weird about the way she kept bringing up this person. It was reported that she thought he looked like the kind of powerful masculine hero she usually reads about in romance novels. She also likes similar kinds of books. I'll never understand why those women are weird if all they talk about is books. It seems like the cheesiest method for them to find love. In any case, she spoke for a little while longer about this individual before it was over. However, I must admit that her description of him reminded me a lot of her description of the icy Russian hitman who fell in love with a woman in the laundry room of their apartment building. That's not something I concocted. That is an actual passage from a book she enjoys reading. And that was it for the day. However, she informed me that he visited the following day and they had a lengthy conversation. He was a former automotive dealer from Serbia, where he was born. However, he made the decision to travel to the US in search of a better life. It took him some time to stand up and regain his bearings. Since he was adept at cars, he was looking for work at surrounding car shops. It took me 5 minutes to figure out how tall he was. She was attractive, blonde, well-groomed, and had an accent. It seems that he was a big fan of westerns and fantasy novels such as The Lord of the Rings. This wasn't unusual because she frequently talks about the customers that come into her cafe, but she did use a lot of flowery terminology. Additionally, it appeared as though she was making fun of him. He was no longer new to her after a while, so she stopped going into great detail about him. He was obviously still a frequent customer at her cafe, and knowing that he no longer seemed to be worth lengthy spills every night gave me a lot more peace of mind. I even walked into her cafe one afternoon to bring her lunch and noticed him sitting in the corner. He looked exactly like him. There was no uncertainty about. I could not help but notice that he was a quite attractive man. Even was his name, she said. This is when things start to go insane. One evening when she arrived home, she was wearing a ridiculous smile. I inquired as to her condition. On the way back, she added, they had a lot of conversations about books. She had walked home with Ivan. She informed him she was married and couldn't go on a date when he asked her out. She said he was really sorry, gave me a tender squeeze, bid me good night, and turned to leave. It's not going to lie, I was irritated by her response when I asked her what was making her grin so much. It's like something out of a book. It appeared like she was romanticizing every interaction she had with Ivan. I was unaware of that. As he frequented her coffee shop frequently, it seemed inevitable that they would continue to speak virtually every day. She could have told him she didn't have a partner, and that would have made me appear weak. Again, even if I had certain ideas about things, I didn't need to discuss them. I just needed to move past my emotions, right? After a week or so, my wife brought a bunch of flowers home and immediately placed them in a vase. I realized then that this was untrue. She claimed that it was a gift from Ivan. Nothing very noteworthy. He admitted to buying a lot of fur to his coworker. By the way, he got a job now. Today was her birthday. He thought it would be great to give me some because he often notices how hard I work. She said something that made. She was attempting to act like a little child who didn't know when someone liked her, and that hurt my skull. I asked her directly whether she knew how much Ivan liked her. Even though she claimed it was obvious when he asked her out on a date, she believed the flowers to be merely a kind gesture. I didn't get that because, in my experience, guys don't get flowers for girls who reject them. Even if it was only because she was married, as a kind gesture. Maybe he was only attempting to get in her pants without doing anything romantic, but he was still trying to get in her pants. It was simple to get close to her, for him at that particular moment. I was aware that he would not be stopping anytime soon. My wife arrived home later than normal 2 days later, proving that I was correct. She still hadn't informed me that she would be running late after nearly 2 hours had passed. She didn't answer the first 2 calls since she wanted to give it some time. She had a history of being late for her own return home. I gave her another call, but by the time she returned home, it was obvious that the bubble had shifted. You'll never believe what transpired with me that evening. She began to tell about how she had shown Ivan the location of the museum and that they were craving American pizza since. He had only ever seen it in films and had never tasted it before. They ate pizza, talked, strolled, and did a lot of other stuff that I didn't care about after that. I did, however, let her finish. When I questioned her, "Are you interested in Ivan?" When she was finished, she looked astonished and upset and responded, "Of course not. The only person she felt that way about was me without close friends or family to tour him around and respond to his inquiries. He was a stranger in a foreign land. All she was doing was attempting to greet him." I wasn't particularly convinced by any of this. I told her up front that she was unable to see Ivan. No longer. Yes, it sparked a heated argument. She rambled on and on about how unfair everything was, how awful it was to feel threatened, and how it should cease feeling that way. Even though my rage was growing out of control, I managed to control it. But I didn't back down. I informed her that she shouldn't spend any more time with Ivan outside of school. It was acceptable for him to visit her coffee shop because he was a client. That wasn't supposed to be the end of it, though. A Serbian girl arrived to buy a ring, and after I advised her to imagine what she would do if she were me, she was given a tour of the town. She answered, "I'd understand, but I think we all know that's untrue." I slept on the couch, to cut a long tale short. That comes as no surprise to anyone, but I'm glad I stopped hearing about Ivan and all his issues. That sufficed to make me feel more comfortable. There was only so much that could happen at her shop, but I knew she would be talking to him there another time. Besides, she was leaving for home at the same time every night, so I didn't see any problems. When my wife wasn't there one day when I went to her cafe, I began to suspect something wasn't right. Ivan wasn't there either, but it didn't really matter because I wasn't sure if he would have been anyhow. However, it was significant that she wasn't present because it doesn't happen very often. I should have waited for her to come back, or asked one of her staff members where she had disappeared, but I decided not to raise a problem. As I was pulling back into my car, I noticed her and Ivan walking up the street, arms wrapped around one another. I wanted to swear, beat up the guy, and cross the street. I drove off, but I lingered in the car and watched them go into the coffee shop. I had a pretty difficult time understanding what had transpired when that happened yesterday. I really wanted to talk to her about it as soon as she got home, but I think you have a lot of power when you know something that other people don't. It will also enable me to identify other possible lies that people may tell. In one instance, I asked her how her day went once she got home, and she said that it was very typical and that she hadn't been any place. I'm here since I don't know where Ivan is. Is it better to try to find out more about it before I talk to her about it? I'm thinking that there might be something up my nose, therefore I'm leaning towards the second alternative since I believe that if I approach her, there would be no chance for me to discover the truth. Kindly share your thoughts with me. Hey everyone, how are you doing? It's me. From the post concerning the Serbian man and the wife in the cafe. I'm back, and this time it's really big news. I discovered a lot, so we ought to discuss it. It took some effort on my part to gain the confidence. But eventually, I made the decision to constantly look for the truth, no matter the cost. Although I've never been a fan of seeing through your partner's phone, I felt compelled to check at it in this particular instance. As soon as I could, I took care of it while she was asleep. She had Ivan on her messaging app, which was not surprising given how frequently they had been communicating. It was easy because it was WhatsApp, allowing me to keep the entire conversation in a text file. Something she texted to my cell phone. Definitely, I threw out the evidence. Only a few images of them cuddling in public that didn't actually criticize them were in her collection, which I browsed through. I sent them to my phone as well. Proof was erased again. I finished in 5 minutes and returned her phone to its proper place. I read everything on my phone after that, which decreased the likelihood that someone would check on you if you woke up unexpectedly. My brain spun from all the bizarre things I saw. I've jotted down the part of the discussion that you may find offensive. It came up after they discussed a book that my wife had recommended. Let's call my mother instead of using her true name. Spouse Clarice in its place. The primary people kind of reminded me of us, Clarice. It occurred to me to think the same thing. The intriguing, attractive guy and the artistic girl who was torn between him and her boyfriend. Directly in a message that followed. Lots of steamy sexual moments. I always think of us when I read that part. Indeed, sex is always beneficial, but in your case, it's a husband. An emoji for a foolish laugh follows. The laughing emoticons belong to Clarice. I agree, and I believe that's what adds to the excitement and fun factor. Something feels off. Although I've never cheated on my partner, I also don't feel particularly guilty about it. It's not correct, yet, and that explains the extreme heat. Yes, and I hope that this continues. It was crazy driving me. It was an early morning. I left the house and went for a walk because I could no longer follow her. I was pretty convinced I would have done something crazy. It was just 3 a.m. After what felt like 5 hours of walking about the town, after my return, and she was still asleep. Have you ever discovered that your spouse is having an affair and then discovered that she is laughing at you while keeping everything private? She was basically what truly irritated me. It wasn't as if lying would ever be acceptable. When I returned, she remained in her sleep. I took hold of her phone, listened in on that section of her conversation with Ivan, and took a screenshot. I felt it was crucial to clarify that there was no doctoring occurring. Clarice undoubtedly felt as though she were living out a scene from one of her dumb novels. However, it was repulsive that I had to bear the brunt of it all. She is unaware of my knowledge. The division has become more severe. There's really no other way for this to go. I also want to watch her collapse. I want to see Ivan fall as well. I need them both to hurt pretty bad, but I'm not sure how I'll do it. Modification 2. When it was finished, it looked stunning. The tale of Serbian guy Ivan and his bookish, adulterous wife Clarice comes to a close here. They were unaware that throughout the entire ordeal, they ought to have been far more concerned for me. I will omit the story's boring passages. Clarice went to work one day and my Uber was parked across the street. In front of everyone, I witnessed the process server enter the cafe and hand her the divorce papers. After that, which was fantastic, we got into our car and headed out. Everything at work went smoothly, and at the end of the day, Clarice had left no messages or missed calls. She was aware that she had been duped, and groveling would not change that. That was my perspective. She returned that evening sobbing uncontrollably. It's not emanating from her nose. She appeared to be a total mess, to be honest. When I saw her in that light, I couldn't help but feel a little melancholy, and I assumed it was because of the remnants of love. That was short-lived, though. She often questioned what went wrong. Was that Ivan? She didn't know a lot of things that I did. Before realizing what I knew, she must have attempted to determine whether her plan had any vulnerabilities. I promised her I would tell her about even though I wasn't sure if I should or shouldn't. I told her that day that I had been walking with her hand in mine and that I had seen her, but I didn't. Tell her everything you know. At that point, she seemed to suddenly become more self-assured and started to both insult and beseech me. That wasn't a good enough cause, she maintained, to file for divorce. I was mistaken to continue seeing him. No, nothing was going on between them, and my suspicions were unfounded. I had you in my sights. It appeared as though she was unsure of how to treat me politely or rudely. When at last I instructed her to get out of my house, she did. That's when the actual separation occurs. That was a really fun aspect for me. I have a lot more money than she does, therefore in the event of a divorce, I stand to lose a lot more. However, I also spent far more money on excellent solicitors, as I actually did. When you're divorcing, choose a competent attorney. I promise it's worthwhile. After telling them I was concerned, I gathered a ton of photos of the two of them together, along with the text conversations that unequivocally proved they were having an affair. In addition, my incredible attorney was able to present me with transactions from her joint account that appeared to be utilized for Ivan's purchase. The dates on certain transactions matched the dates in the transcript of his entire text message in which he expresses gratitude to her for various things. She was obviously spending cash on her Serbian boyfriend. In my opinion, the attorney effectively conveyed the impression that she was a shallow person. Observing it was entertaining. She fought valiantly, but I didn't witness anything noteworthy. While I'm not a flawless man, I don't have any shortcomings that would cause a lady to want to break up with me. After the breakup, everything was great for me. I kept my car and house. Because I had given her a means of earning money, and because I had been a rather blatant cheater, there was no demand for alimony from me. I adore you, Judge. She kept the automobile that I had purchased for her. I wasn't bothered by that enough to give it any thought. And since she didn't walk away from the divorce empty-handed, it was simple for me to accept what I got. Right now, this is my favorite part. Even was difficult to get even with. It was quite difficult, but one day he was heading out of the cafe. I followed him around the corner and down the street. I grabbed his attention, introduced myself, and gave him a forceful blow to the jaw. When I broke, he appeared really astonished. His lip and knocked him down. It was excruciatingly painful. Although I wasn't looking to start a fight on the street, I would have if one had arisen. He got up and went, which leads me to assume he realized he couldn't claim the moral high ground in this situation. It was pleasant. I wish there was more I could have done, because he knew he was playing with a married woman. However, I felt it was sufficient, and that was probably the most I could have done without facing criminal charges. Next, Clarice. Remember the rent I had to pay for her? It was expensive because her cafe was in a desirable part of town, and it was due again. It was meant to be submitted by. She didn't have the money to pay the cafe rent when she called me at the end of May, despite the fact that it was May 1st. I urged her to sell the car to get the money after she continued pleading. I hung up the phone after that. She contacted me multiple times that week, but I never answered, a revealer. I learned that she had sold the automobile when she called to curse at me. She expressed her displeasure that I was unable to assist her in any manner. I told her it was wrong to imagine that it would be thrilling and enjoyable to cheat on me. All she could say was that, I'm going to wait until May of next year to find out how difficult it is for her to make ends meet. She'll lose the shop too, if the gods have their way, especially since she's unable to communicate with my bookkeeper. It's been enjoyable. To tell the truth, I'm happy, wealthy, and unmarried right now. The breakup, betrayal, and adultery hurt like the dickens, but you have to move on, right? I'll carry that out. We appreciate your presence, as well as your thoughtful remarks and recommendations. Many thanks for it. I'm hoping I won't ever need to compose another post. Farewell.